We are almost at summer, which is the time when our medical students will graduate and start work. And a common concern of medicine students when they graduate, not just what I hear from my students, but also this has been published, researched about, is that students worry that their knowledge of anatomy isn't very good. They finished their anatomy studies maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and now they don't know any anatomy. And as a teacher, I'm quite interested in this and in memory and in learning, because that's what teaching and learning is, right? And I had a bit of a strange experience this week. So here's an anecdote. Anecdote does not equal evidence, but I think we've all experienced something like this. Now, to finish off the anatomy studies for our medicine students, at the end of year 2, I give them 4 weeks of clinical cases, but not your typical clinical cases that you read in a textbook where patient presents with A and B and diagnosis C, and not that. What I did was I asked a bunch of my clinical colleagues, ones that I knew well, to write me some real clinical cases, either patients they had actually experienced or very realistic examples of patients, because real medicine is not as tidy as the textbooks. It's a lot messier, it's a lot muddier. But this is really good fun. So the purpose of this is to get students to work together in groups, get to talk all this out, get to pull together all their clinical knowledge, their anatomy knowledge, their physiology knowledge, and show them how much they know and show them what they can do. It also prepares them for exams, gives them a little step up for year 3. Lots of really good reasons for this. Now I was going through my clinical cases, and this one here is written by Mr. Michael. And that drew a complete blank. Now I remember the case because I see it every year, and I wrote these a while ago. And I cannot remember who Mr. Michael is. So this would be a consultant, a clinical consultant, a doctor colleague that I asked to write this. So I've got metadata around this, as it were, as in I know that the people I asked to write these cases were people that taught regularly, that I knew well, that I trusted, that understood what I was trying to do, that I knew had all this experience. You know what I mean? I know that I knew this person well. And then when I look at this, Mr. Michael, I was completely blank. I looked at the other cases, the other people who'd written things, I knew exactly who they were, no problem. This Mr. Michael, absolute blank, which is interesting for somebody who's interested in learning and memory, right? So I sat there and gave myself plenty of time and worked around this to try to remember who this was. Now I know what the specialty is because I know what the case is, so that should help, right? Nothing. And I let my brain try to pull out that memory. I know it's in there. Complete blank. And I gave myself plenty of time. Complete blank. I'm not sure if that's scary. I think it's normal, right? And I had no recall whatsoever. So then I went to look him up, of course. And I looked him up and I saw his photo and his first name, Mr. Ashraf Michael. Ash! Bam! Everything came back. Ash! I know Ash. Ash used to teach all the time. He's a lovely man, incredibly well respected, incredibly knowledgeable and experienced, great teacher, really enthusiastic teacher. You know, as I knew from my metadata, he was someone that taught with us regularly. So I went from having no recollection at all until I had that prompt, the first name or the photo or two of those things combined, and then bam, I can see his face, I can remember how he behaved, I can remember what, you know, how he spoke, how he talked, how he taught, how we interacted. I can remember him. Do you know what I mean? That's memory, right? And I think we've all had it. We all have experiences like that. This is why I take so many photos. I take probably 10,000 photos a year. This is how I got into making videos, because I take so many photos, is because I know that for me, I forget a lot, and photos bring back so many memories. Photos are an anchor for the things that are stored in my brain, right? Same thing happens with you and your anatomy when you're graduating. it feels like you've forgotten everything. When I talk to graduating medical students, their knowledge is actually very good. What's happened is when we've taught you anatomy, we've not just taught you the anatomy, but we've given you the basis of medicine, the foundational language of medicine, and you've been using it. You've been using it every day for the 2 or 3 years since I finished with you and passed you on, right? You know your stuff, you did the work, you showed that you could pass the exams, and as long as you weren't cramming, and you studied this over a long period of time properly, that knowledge is still in your head. With those prompts, it'll come back. With practice, it'll come back. And as you move through medicine into different specialties, you'll need to know different areas, right? So what we did when we were teaching you anatomy was we were getting you started, but you'll add to this as you need to practice it and as you need to learn more detail, just like everything else in the world, right? Anyway, like I say, anecdote does not equal evidence, but I thought that was a really interesting experience. I had a complete blank. I knew the memory was in there. I knew this was someone I knew well. Could pull nothing out of my mind at all until I had that visual prompt. This is what we mean by use it or lose it. The memory's in there, you've done the work. You will draw on the bits that are useful to you in the future. Not advertising, but the series of histology videos I've been doing, well, I first looked at that a long time ago and haven't really looked at it since. And as I'm doing the preparation for the videos and looking down the microscope at the cells, it's all coming back and I'm adding to it, and it's rounding out and getting better because I'm looking at it again and adding all the other knowledge that I've been working on the last 20 years and stuff. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if you feel like you've forgotten stuff, but you passed your exams, don't worry. It's in there. You got it. Okay.